Welcome back. My name is James, and I hope you are all having a wonderful morning on this brisk and cold Tuesday. So, I just wanted to talk today a little bit about my influences as an artist and, what inspires me. And if you've read anything about the channel, you'll see that I go on about evangelizing artists like Sid Mead and Ralph McQuarrie, Frazetta, Boris Vallejo. They're all very influential to me, but I wanted to talk about maybe some pop culture franchise influences that have really left an impression on me and sort of helped steer my development in a certain direction. So I would say one of the franchises that left the biggest impression on me was probably Star Wars, but as I've gotten older, also Star Trek, in terms of just the design aesthetic, the retro futuristic design aesthetic. It's very definitely left a strong impression on me. Sid Mead, obviously, someone that I got into a little bit later on, but drastically influenced my art. Shortly after I discovered Loomis and started retooling my style, I started sort of floundering a little bit in terms of which direction I wanted to go. I had been doing comics for a number of years. I worked for a talent agency for a couple of years, and before that did various indie work, had a few pitches greenlit by various publishers, Marcosia Comics namely, but never did any sort of major work for the big two, Marvel, DC. Even though I've been going to conventions for the better part of a decade, showing my portfolio around and definitely improving, getting better. Just had never really happened with the big two, never got my shot with them. So I was kind of at a crossroads, and I had always loved painting and had gone through phases in my life where I'd pick it up through spurts and then stop, come back to it, and went on a trip down to Disney World, I would say in 2017. Went through kind of a, I wouldn't say it was a difficult breakup, but it was a consequential breakup at the time. And then I just decided to take a trip with my family down to Disney that year. And also had started getting more serious about my fitness, changed my lifestyle around. And then when I went to Disney, I was just inspired by all of the work that I saw in the Star Wars launch bay. I don't know if anybody's ever been to launch bay. And my sister was with me at the time, and my mother, and they said, why don't you do some of these paintings? You could definitely do these paintings. You're good enough to do this. And I thought to myself, you know what? I probably am good enough to do this. I haven't painted in like a decade, but I've been drawing my butt off, and I think that basically drawing is painting. They're really the same thing. If you can draw, you can paint. I mean, painting is drawing with value, basically, in color. Using colored pigments to draw with value. That's what painting is. And so at the time, I thought to myself, let me try and pursue this. Let me scratch this itch. And I had no clue how to do that at the time. I ended up getting some indie concept work with on a property called Spell Warriors, which was successfully kickstarted. I think Jonathan Reppian was attached. I only did the primary development art, the initial development art, and then I sort of left the project after a certain point. And I had my reasons for leaving, which I won't get into here, but let's just say that we had some differences about pay rate. We'll leave it at that. But it was a very beneficial project to work on because I scratched that sort of digital painting itch that I wanted to scratch, and I did a good amount of digital work. And while I was doing that, at the same time, I was developing a cyberpunk comic and I had some pages for that, and that comic was called Androids of New York. Very much sort of inspired by the aesthetic of The Fifth Element, the movie The Fifth Element. And I showed some of that work to a school director at the atelier at Flowerfield, which is a local arts atelier, and he liked it so much, especially my perspective work, that he hired me there to teach. And through that, I kind of fell into teaching. And for the last 5 years, I've been primarily teaching and doing, freelance book cover work. And if you're curious, my work is up on Hire an Illustrator, some of my work, and you can check it out if you type in Hire an Illustrator, James Beal. It'll come up, and that'll give you an idea of what I'm about. I kind of also, around 2017, fell into holiday art, which getting paid seasonally to work for a studio in upstate New York doing sculptured pumpkins and licensed art on pumpkins, these 100-pound art pumpkins, which was really cool. And didn't do it this past year because of Corona, but hopefully the director there, Tom, will be able to get things back up and running to pre-pandemic capacity. That would be really nice, and then I'd love to come back and do some more work for him. He was a great guy. But without getting into a tangent or rambling, basically that sort of has led me to where I am now in terms of just pursuing, my interests in science art and sci-fi art. And for the last few years, I've been doing oil painted covers, like I said. And I also, last year, got a position at another school teaching digital art because I have an extensive background in that. And that sort of led me to get back into digital, and that sort of brought me full circle to where I am now, where I'm doing both traditional and digital pieces in tandem. So basically, this is a study for one of my digital paintings, and my digital paintings, I'm highly inspired by franchises like Halo, especially all the Aliens, actually, which Sid Mead had a heavy hand in designing. Movie Aliens, really how they were just able to effectively translate the look of the colonial Marines. Really cool stuff. Excellent concept design in that movie. And just, as much as I do like concept design, I think that I'm definitely more of an illustrator. I'm not the most industrial-minded artist. And I think if you're going to be a concept designer, you have to be super industrial-minded. And you also have to be able to thrive in a very corporate environment. And that's just not me. I am not cut out for an office. I can work in a collaborative setting. I can take direction from an art director. But I prefer if I had an ideal setup, I would say that the less buttoned up that work setting is, the more I'd prefer to work in that kind of place. I'm not really a fan of really buttoned up work settings, and I've done it all. I'm pushing 40, and I've done it all. I've done the buttoned up thing, I've done the graphic design thing, I've done the freelance illustration thing, I've done the talent agency thing, and I'm now doing the teaching thing, and again, getting more back into freelance. And I can say with surety that the worst experience I ever had was working in New York City, right down the street from DC Comics, at the Limited Brands building. I was not a fan of that experience. I love the team there, but very buttoned up, very corporate, very political. A lot of office politics going on. Just not my cup of tea. I prefer to work on my own terms if I can, and for that reason, I prefer contract work. That's just me. There's a freedom there, a flexibility there if you can get the work. But that's not to say if a big studio came knocking and offered me lots of money to design, to design assets for them, I wouldn't jump on that opportunity like anybody else. Like if Marvel or DC, were like, hey, we want you to design this help design this tie-in game. We're doing, I don't know, what's DC Universe Online or whatever. I don't even think I think they farm that out to a gaming company at this point, but someone else can sort of clarify that. So what I'm doing is I'm just kind of giving her a little bit of a weapons belt here. I don't know. She's got like at this point, this is like just pure concept design right now. I'm just kind of going in and finding out which forms work the best. Another artist that heavily influenced me, Matt Stawicki, just his Dragonlance stuff is unbelievable. The things he's able to do in Photoshop, just really, really amazing. Yeah. But I would say, Halo left an impression on me just because of the sound, the richness of the lore, but also the richness of the lore, the sort of thoroughly thought out way that the tech works. Excuse me, have a drink of my cinnamon coffee. The way that all the human tech is very geometric, and there's a lot of hard lines, and that all the Covenant tech, there's very fluid lines, a lot of flowy, almost no straight lines, sort of mandated in the design of the Covenant tech. All that stuff is really, 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 really compelling to me, and yeah. No, I find it very, very, very cool how awesomely designed everything in that game is, just from the different aesthetics of the alien races and factions to, how the humans are very much like still using ballistic weaponry and conventional, still using the wheel, which is a very old technology. They haven't even really gotten into anti-grav with a lot of their tech. They're very much not even a type 2. I think they might not even be a type. They're barely a type 1. But then you contrast that with the Covenant, which is clearly I think a type 2 civilization, or at least a high type 1. And then they sort of, I know that they fleshed that out in the Halo wiki, which I'm not gonna lie, I've read a lot of the Halo wiki in the past. I don't know if I want to give her sort of an ammo belt down here. I'll probably give her not an ammo belt, but maybe just some like straps. Kind of going around and connecting. Let's see, I kind of like that so far. And one of the things I think that is important when you're painting, but especially painting digitally, is to resist the temptation to lose that painterliness right away. I think that's where I think a stylus is hugely beneficial. I just ordered a Hawaiian stylus. Really looking forward to that coming in the mail, and I'm going to be using that coming up on an upcoming demo I'm doing for the atelier, doing a landscape painting demo. And I do apologize if I'm rambling or if I'm saying a lot. This is my second YouTube video ever, so I'm definitely getting the kinks, working the kinks out, as they say. I guess this is some sort of flak jacket that she's wearing here. Right. Just want to give those, what would futuristic soldiers be without lots of armor? I hope you enjoy the ambient Nintendo music. This was initially, when I did this template for this character, when I worked out the structure in my class, my graphic novel class, I was going to make her a reinterpretation of my fantasy character, Marlene, character that I worked on with Karen Travis of Star Wars fame, on a book called Fury's Key. But that book actually was never published. It got held up in development hell. But it was a pleasure working with Karen Travis. She was a great author to work for, very professional, very pleasant, very kind. Nothing but good things to say about her. And humble, clear, a good communicator, and consummate professional. That was another. A lot of times when you work on these comic projects, it's the people get in their own way, and not in Karen's case. Karen was fine. I didn't have an issue with Karen on that project, but I would say the editor on that project kind of got in his own way, and he'd be fine with the direction that the book was going, and then he'd show it to a few retailers, and then they'd crap on it, and then he'd completely change his mind about the book, and he couldn't commit to a direction. I mean, he did some good things. He went out and got Karen Travis because he realized that he needed a professional writer to write it. And he definitely invested in me and my art at the time. Looking back, though, frankly, I still had some growing to do as far as just, that was really, that was actually right around the time I was getting into Loomis, and my work was moving in a good direction, but I would say I wasn't quite there yet in terms of my anatomy. And so, I mean, it was what it was, but needless to say, it was a very informative experience. Every experience I've had, I've learned a great deal from. I also worked on a book called Dream Reavers. And that was a book by an author by the name of Raphael Moran, who used to publish through Ape Entertainment, which was a pretty big publisher a few years back. I think they're defunct now, but they were a big deal for a while. They were featured on Comic Geek Speak, back when Comic Geek Speak was a very, very big thing. I don't know, I think a lot of those guys have kind of moved on. They've got families and whatnot, but they were a real pleasure to listen to for a long time. I enjoyed them, and had the pleasure of meeting a few of the guys at shows over the years through Ken, because, Ken was always in those circles. My friend Ken Marion, comic book artist for DC. Also a great guy, extremely talented, and it's going to be my wedding party, which I'm really excited about. He's a good friend, more than anything else. You know, yes, a fellow artist, but more importantly, a good friend. And so yeah, I mean, I honestly learned so much from going to conventions with him and meeting people and talking to editors. As much of a slog as it was, as much of a pain as it was at points, and as depressing as it was at points, because, you know, you go and you show your portfolio to these guys and they just rip you apart, man. And some of them are nice about it, like some of them are really cool, but it's still like they're giving you the straight talk. That's tough to hear, and like it was important to hear it from them. Helped me get a lot better overall. I was able to internalize the criticism. I had a support structure around me that was able to kind of convince me to keep going and listen to the criticism and not just dismiss it, but dismiss the parts maybe that I thought were taste-based, but take on board the consensus of the publishers in terms of things that were, you know, criticisms of anatomy and perspective, like if there was a consensus to be had, right? So if you show your work to 8, and this is important, like, because this gets into how to take on board advice from a critique from an editor. Well, my contention is you don't want to just go to one editor to show and get a critique and call it a day. You want to get like 8 critiques. And if all the editors that you show your work to across the board, like, you know, who are in a good mood, in a bad mood, maybe in a shitty mood because they didn't meet like some studio head that day that they were supposed to meet with, or they're in a great mood because they got their book optioned, right? Be it whatever the case may be, you want to show your you want to get as many critiques as possible. I would say eight companies is a good number, and then you show your work to these 8 companies, these 8 editors, and they give you, and if they're all giving you the same sort of criticism on a specific area, then I would say that is worth looking at and seeing if you can improve that area of your work. If it's inconsistent, then it becomes more of a subjective call on your part. Is what this editor is saying based in taste, or are there structural issues here that I need to look at? And if so, are they drastic structural issues that aren't easily fixable, or are they easily fixable? And is it worth me just reviewing some tried and true art educational resources like, you know, Figure Drawing by Allsworth by Andrew Loomis, which helped me greatly. I remember one year I got a particularly harsh crit from Dark Horse's Chris Warner, and he really just like was like, you don't know anatomy. That's basically what he said, and that's what led me to look more at Andrew Loomis. And I think the problem is I did know anatomy, but I was preconceiving a lot. I was getting in my own way, and that's never good. You don't want to get in your own way. I think a lot of artists do that, and it's easy to do, especially in comics, because people tend to ape and preconceive a lot, meaning they try to like copy other people's styles a lot. I see, you know, there's a lot of people that try to copy Jim Lee in comics, and the problem with that is that Jim Lee's just so good and innately good at drawing in that slightly exaggerated style, and he's coupling that with his knowledge of how an anatomy actually looks. Like, if you ever look at a Jim Lee drawing, yes, he knows anatomy left and right, but he's consciously breaking the rules at certain points. Like, he makes his hands way too big on purpose, and he's able to get away with it because everything else is works so well together as far as how the shapes relate to each other in his forms, right? And that comes from his knowledge of anatomy, and because he's able to draw a referential figure so well, he's able to then break the rules. And style has very little to do with it at the end of the day. I don't know if this is Animal Crossing or not. We're already at 24. Jeez, I think I'll cut this at 40. So what I'm doing is I'm just going through here and giving her some knee pads. You always want to look at reference when you're drawing. And I've done enough of this stuff right now so that I don't have to overly reference this. I've done a lot of sci-fi soldiers, painted a lot of sci-fi soldiers, but be that as it may, I'm going to open up a tab here and Google some military knee pads. And I think maybe in my next video next week that I do, what I'll do is I will get into some of my previous oil work, and I'll show you some of my sci-fi oil work, and some of the influences that have, for that, some more influences, share with you some more influences that have helped steer the development of my oil work. But I'm looking at knee pads right now, and I'm not really finding, there are these cool looking black knee pads. They look like SWAT knee pads, frankly. Oh, that's crazy. It's like a cod piece or something. Just dial this in here. Can't go wrong with an accordion playing in the background with some little, I guess it's a little Animal Crossing or something along those lines. Gotta love it. Gotta love Animal Crossing. A lot of this stuff is going to get lost in the halftone when I do add the paints. You can see I laid in the values to the face right away just because I like to sort the face rather quickly in my drawings. I'm not like crazy about let's take some screenshots of this armored suit here this guy has. Really cool. He's got these like pads. I mean, I gave her some crazy futuristic looking gauntlets on her arms. I might actually work that back a little bit. I'm not sure how much I want to push the believability in certain areas. Oh, and if you want, please feel free to like, subscribe, or dislike if you dislike this video, because that will help too. Whether you like or dislike, if you do either or, it still boosts the video. So you're still doing me a favor if you dislike. But yes, no, I mean, in all seriousness, if you like what I'm doing here, then, and I haven't bored you to tears yet, then, just give me a smash that like button, as they say, right, in YouTube parlance, and subscribe if you're really interested in following what I'm doing here. If you don't mind me talking your ear off. There's like plenty of very talented art tubers out there. See some art tubers that I really enjoy. Proko I really like. He's got a lot of really great drawing tips. Adam Duffman is the guy that I've been following for quite some time, and he does really great art talks, very professional setup, much more professional than me here, which I'm just using my phone cam, right? He's interesting because his audience, I think, tends to be younger. And while I am younger than him, I'm not a hell of a lot younger than him. I'm a little younger than him. I mean, he's an Xer, and I'm kind of what they call an Xennial, right? I was born in '82, so I kind of straddle that line between X and millennial. I'm probably more towards the millennial end, so I have a slightly different perspective on things than he does. He's got some more mileage under his belt than I do, and he's definitely been working way longer than I have. So it's beneficial to hear his perspective, because I think, for me, I take on board his advice in a slightly different way than someone who's younger would. I think, even though I think he is very much speaking primarily to people in their 20s. And that's fine. You know, there's a lot of good advice out there that people in their 20s should probably heed. God knows I kind of could have used some of that advice in my 20s when I was at Pratt. And when I was younger too. I'm not a huge fan of how this breaks up the knee. I think this needs to go a little lower. I mean, it's at the end of the day, it's a knee pad. Go back to my kind of like that. This is like Zelda or something. Again, a lot of this stuff is going to get sort of covered up by the halftone. So. I think that's one thing that's difficult, is making a soldier's uniform just dynamic, right? Because there's so many like geometric elements to a military uniform, especially in a lot of sci-fi, that getting all those elements to look dynamic on a human form. I mean, when you really look at soldiers, they're not the most dynamic looking silhouettes. A lot of times they're clunky looking and bulky looking. So how do you make that work in an image, right? Not an easy task. Do that. Gotta fix that perspective a little bit there. That's the other thing, is you want to notice how, you know, I'm very much adhering to the Loomis method here. So I have my head from the hairline to the chin is 8 heads tall, right? Definitely want to go with that. You want to go from chin to top of the eyes there, because her head's down, so we're going off the hairline. If she was facing straight on, we go from the top of the head to the chin, right? If this was a straight on view. Just an application of the Loomis method. You can even see my marks that I made for the head here. I could even, let me just demonstrate that. So if we follow the head's probably around there, right? So 2. I don't know if this is the same. It's not. It's a different, actually, this was a different measurement. But in any event, this is 8 units tall. The head is 8 units tall. Her legs are in perspective. And I'm measuring from the top of the head to the chin here to get that head length. So let's just do that. And when I do that and I go down here, you can see it matches up. Now I'm gonna double check something now I got myself. Get a new piece of paper here. So it looks like I measured from the hairline here, from the distance from where the chin starts to where the eyes end. And if you're doing that in the 3/4 view, this is what you're gonna get. You're gonna get something like that. We're at 39, so I have about a minute left. So I'm just gonna wrap up this arm here, and I'll post this when I'm done, before I start my digital paints. But yeah, application of the Loomis method, feeder in perspective, all that good stuff. If we move these out, this is halfway between the hip and the knee. Do that. We're at 39.56. that's what I've got so far. And I hope you all have a great rest of your day. I'll be uploading this shortly, and I'll be producing more content, continuing to evangelize Sid Mead, talk about what I do, share what I do with you guys. You know, I'm grateful for all the likes. I'm grateful for everybody who subscribed. Thank you so much. I'm sort of still finding my sea legs with YouTube, so as I produce more, these videos will get better in quality and hopefully become more effective at communicating my ideas too. I'll become more effective at communicating my ideas to you. But with that said, have a great rest of your day, and I'm gonna finish my coffee here. All right, take care.